Okay, so we are in Mexico.
In Merida.
In Merida at Manjar Blanco, which is a wonderful restaurant here in Merida. It's actually been featured on Netflix. And after having such a wonderful meal, we can't get up. So we figured now would be a good time. Now that some time has passed, we can kind of share with you our whole very bad, awful debacle with AirFrance. So, where do you want to start?
Where do you begin?
How about we start with before we even left to go. So, this is a trip that we booked using Delta miles, and Delta put us onto AirFrance for the entirety of the journey. So from the Chicago area to
Houston? No, that was this trip.
Paris.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Chicago to Paris, and then Paris to Marrakesh, and the same way back. And we were booked in economy, and so before the trip there, the day before we left, they gave you the option of, hey, would you like to upgrade? I said, great, yeah, let's upgrade. And so there were seats available in business class, the lie down seats. And I said, it'd be nice, we can do this. And so it was like $500 each. So we went through the process, and then at the end, you select your seats, and it said, hey, it literally said, there's a problem on our end with the website, call.
Right.
So I called, and we had the same issue with Iberia, where you call, and they basically say, well, we can't help you.
You have to go to the airport.
You have to go to the airport to get this resolved. Right. Which makes no sense if you are able to actually select the seats for them just to pass you off to the agent, and you have to wait till you get to the airport. But regardless, we got to the airport the next day. Flight was fine. We got from Chicago to Paris. From Paris to Marrakesh.
No problems.
No problem. Marrakesh was phenomenal. We'll have some videos on that in a bit. If you follow us on Facebook, our Instagram, or even on TikTok, you'll see some of our journey there. But on the way back, we get to the airport. Check-in is fine and everything, and we're relaxing in the lounge. And our flight was scheduled to leave at, I believe, like 5:30, something like that. Regardless, whatever time it was, we realized like about 15 minutes before everything's supposed to be happening as far as boarding and stuff, there's no one there. And so we kind of start to hear this hubbub from everybody else, and we see that the flight's been delayed like 15 minutes.
Right.
Now, what's important throughout this whole story was that not only was the flight delayed, we got this information from the staff working there at the Marrakesh airport. They are not employees of AirFrance. They are actually contracted by the airline to service flights coming in and out. We hear this from them, and then we see that an update on their board. We get no notification from either AirFrance or from Delta.
Nothing.
In fact, TripIt, I think, gave us
the first alert. TripIt.
So shout out to TripIt, because you guys are always right on top of stuff. Your website is from the 1990s, but whatever. And so we're like, okay, cool. It's not like this hasn't happened before. We go back to the lounge.
Right.
And we relax. And over the next hour, we start sensing that there's more problems with this flight, but we're getting no information at all from AirFrance.
So if I can just interject.
Please.
We never got any information from
Zero.
AirFrance.
Spoiler alert,
nothing.
Even
a little tidbit of information. So that lack of communication is that's the straw that broke the camel's back in this story.
Even in our pre-retirement occupations, communication is the first responsibility that you have to your customers. And AirFrance just failed miserably at this. In fact, they could not have failed worse. even if they had sent a, we don't know what you're talking about, that would have been better than them sending nothing at all, right? So, to make a very long story short, and if you followed us on YouTube and Facebook when we were live, and even on TikTok, you would know that what happened was that there is some sort of verification for the airplane itself that has to take place. Our airplane was there. It just was, for some reason, didn't get the certification or validation that it needed for that flight.
From Air France.
From Air France.
The plane was there. The pilot was there. The
people, everything.
The passengers.
The peanuts, the chocolate, everything was there. But because of that, they could not process the boarding passes. Therefore, they could not let us on the plane. So this goes on for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'll say this a few times. The staff there working at the Marrakesh airport were phenomenal.
They did an excellent job.
2 or 3 of them never lost their cool, very empathetic, and they finally said, we just heard from Air France that they're not going to be able to solve this tonight. We're canceling
and you're on
the flight.
your own.
Yeah. So the person that they were talking to from the Marrakesh airport said, well, what should we tell the passengers as far as hotels and stuff? And they said, tell them that they're on their own and they can take it up with us when they finally do get to Paris. Okay, so a tip here. Once you ever get any type of alert from an airline that your flight is canceled,
oh boy,
stop what you're doing and start to make preparations on your own. If you can get into a line for the airline for them to help you, absolutely do so, but don't wait on that. While you're in the line, be making preparations for worst case scenario, because you may be one of 200, 250 people that are all doing the same thing. We're fortunate that we're able to get onto Expedia and paid $50 extra to have a hotel room that was reserved, but we could cancel even though it was for that day. Because we didn't know if somehow magically they would decide that they were going to give us rooms. Because the next thing that happened was that they started to shuffle us all back through customs to get our luggage.
What a process
they didn't want to take our luggage. Now,
what a process that was.
They did the best they could. They did have some separate lines for us to kind of, because we're coming back into the country. And then we had to get cash again because we had, since Morocco is a closed currency, we had to go back and get cash again just to be able to pay for the taxi.
Thanks, Air France.
So we did that. We got to the hotel. It was a Sofitel. That's a whole nother experience, but it was not the Sofitel experience I would have liked Stephanie had, because this was, apart from resorts, it was the best hotel that we've ever. It should have been the best hotel we've ever stayed at, but the experience there wasn't the best. So the next morning, while this is all happening, we get to the hotel, and then we start getting alerts from Air France that, hey, we've booked you on the next flight, which was contradictory to what we were told at the airport, which was everyone needs to be back at the airport at 6:30 in the morning. And at that time, we hope to have figured stuff out, but we need everybody back here at 6:30, and we'll start getting on flights. Meanwhile, we get an alert from Air France that we already have you rebooked on a flight at 10 a.m. That's going from Marrakesh to Paris, and then Paris to Chicago. So we're like, okay, so we call and confirm that in fact that is the flight that we had. So we were able to get a few more hours of sleep, because by this time it was like 10:30 at night when we got to the hotel, and having to be back at the airport at 6:30 was not something we were looking forward to.
Not at all.
Well, we're here at the Sofitel in Marrakesh. Indeed, not where we expected to be. We expected to actually be at the Hilton Charles de Gaulle Airport tonight in Paris. Probably doing the same thing, eating, but before we went to bed to catch our flight tomorrow morning to Chicago.
Right.
And that's not happening because
we're not even sure what's happening.
Air France, I think by this time we've had 4 different flight changes that was supposed to be leaving today to Marrakesh, and then tomorrow from Paris to Chicago. Then it was through Detroit. Now it's leaving tomorrow at 11:30 instead of 9:30 to Paris, and then overnight in Paris, and then leaving Friday for Chicago, which is not what we expected. We did not expect to be spending 2 nights in hotels in order to get home, and it's just ridiculous.
And we still have the hotel in Paris for tonight, right?
Yeah, because of course there was no way for us to get a hold of the hotel to cancel. And even if we could, the cancellation's already gone by. So, AirFrance is going to be getting a bill for all of this. Fortunately, airhelp.com is the site you go on to and you put in all your information. But, I'm sure there are people out there, though, that this is an unexpected and unbudgeted expense.
Well, we didn't budget for this.
We didn't budget for it. We can cover it. It's not something we want to do. We're joking about the fact that we're trying to figure out where we're going to go in January. Well, nowhere.
We're going to go for an extra night in Marrakesh and then maybe an extra night in Paris.
Yeah. So, but don't cry for us. But it's and then this this hotel, Sofitel Marrakesh, didn't even make it even better because they've just been. I'll characterize it as indifferent to this being a luxury hotel and just can't seem to get their act together.
It's been a little rough.
It's been rough. Like Holiday Inn rough. Okay. I mean, everything from the TV not working to, dial 9 for anything you need. And you dial 9, no one answers. You go downstairs and I didn't tell you, they literally were just giving the guy a hard time about not answering the phone. So we're going to enjoy our meal here and then call it an evening. Travel's always an adventure. We're still smiling. Not happy, but we're smiling.
I'm happy.
I'm happy to be with you. All right. So hopefully everyone else is having a great evening. We'll get by and talk to you later.
Bye.
And so we get to the airport like 8-something. We get checked in, and guess what? And we were so close. So we're still not certain what the issue is. I'm hearing now that it's a technical verification of the airplane, but we're now delayed again. And as you can see, they got like 4 or 5 people on the plane, then stopped, and then did the thing of calling people and looking at their phone while they were doing something on the computer. So we're at a loss at this point. We've got about an hour and 15-minute window between our flight that's supposed to land in Paris and our flight from Paris to Detroit. So we'll see how this goes, but it's beyond comical at this point. Same problem.
The exact same problem.
We can't get on the plane because it's not verified yet. So everyone who was there from 6:30 were still there.
Yep.
Because, surprise, they were still on our flight, which was actually 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So this time it was about an hour and a half wait, and we finally took off. But of course, by this point, we land in Paris and we miss our flight from Paris to Chicago by that much. Well, we missed our flight to Detroit. So now we're down in the bowels to try to figure out how to get to the U.S. And again, no notifications from AirFrance, no apologies, anything. Now, just as an aside, our flight here, the flight from Chicago to Houston, was delayed just a tiny bit. Delta sent us text messages and alerts in the app, not only letting us know, but also apologizing.
They did an excellent job of
phenomenal job of communicating. And this was just for like a 15-minute delay. So it was just this huge contrast. It was just kind of like a c'est la vie attitude with Air France. So by this point, we actually had to go into the bowels of the airport there at Charles de Gaulle and basically try to negotiate for the next flight. Stephanie, by this point, had identified a couple other flights, and this is something you should always do. So you go up to the counter with some knowledge and basically kind of help direct the agent. Not trying to do their job, but you're helping them to perhaps find other flights that you're comfortable with.
So a couple of tips on that. You want to know the partners within the group because they are able to more easily maneuver if you are able to find a flight with one of the partners. Now, as it stood, they went ahead and figured out how to get us on an American Airlines flight, which is not part of their group, but we were grateful.
Yeah.
And Chris's idea is the one that we took. I wanted to stay in Paris overnight because by that time I was
wonder
tired.
why.
Well, and it's Paris.
It is Paris.
But Chris just wanted to get out of Paris, get out of France, and get off of AirFrance.
Yeah.
Altogether. And so he booked us on the first flight home, which was a quick turnaround. We needed to get to the gate and get on the plane at that point.
Yeah, because the option they had originally given us was to go from Paris to Detroit and then overnight in Detroit and then Detroit to Chicago. But that flight wasn't until the next day. And one of the things that we have found extremely important is that when you have flights that are canceled or delayed and you're in another country, take the first flight that you can to get you back into, in our case, U.S. or your home country. The reason why is that once you do that, particularly in the U.S., you have a lot more options available to you. You may fly into an airport that you feel comfortable driving from. You may fly into an airport where you can then jump onto, say, a low-cost carrier just so you can get home. So it was important to me that we say, whatever's the fastest flight that gets us from Paris into the U.S., and that happened to be a flight that was leaving just at about an hour.
Yeah, we didn't have
spoiler
much time.
alert, it was also delayed. But it was Air France going from Paris to Boston. We stayed overnight in Boston and then flew out that next morning from Boston to Chicago.
And at that point, I had no idea what day or time it was.
Yeah,
But
once we landed
were
in Boston, and because it was an American flight, which we were having elite status with them, we were able to call and get our 8 o'clock flight pushed back to like an 11 o'clock flight, so we could actually sleep a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So that was that. So that's our story. Time heals all wounds, and I'm sure at some point there will be an opportunity to fly on Air France, and we may go kicking and screaming back to it. But,
I doubt it.
But the overall
there's other
experience
options.
was not the best.
So
Yeah.
Marrakesh, I know British Airways will
British
fly
Airways.
in and out of Marrakesh. So my goal is to avoid Air France whenever possible.
You heard it here, folks. So, but we're glad to be back, and we were able to kind of heal our wounds, and now we're sipping nice fresh lemonade here in Merida. But wanted to kind of share that story with you. Thanks for all those who followed and was wishing us well as we went through that
As we
that
muddled
experience.
through the experience together.
Yeah, really, that was our first time having that level of
Oh,
just
gosh.
mayhem for a flight. But
And it was on the tail of such a beautiful
Yeah.
trip to Marrakesh.
But again, we can't say enough about the flight crew, the ticket agents, everyone other than whoever's manning the operations behind the scenes at Air France did a phenomenal job.
That's true.
But the people sitting there in Paris or whatever behind their keyboards, you guys just did a horrible job in terms of communicating and having empathy for your passengers, and it's going to take a while for us to get over that. So with that, thanks for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, click on the like button, consider subscribing, following us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Take care.
Bye.